דקות היסטוריות עם יובל מלכי.
My name is Rami, and I heard in the last lecture that most of you want to be entrepreneurs. That's the idea. I'm not sure about that. But we are from the Jewish Torch, and the Jewish Torch is all about Jewish identity. Now, you all know Jewish identity, it's a big word, but it's a kind of a complex thing to be Jewish in modern times. Because you have political views, you have your religion, each one of us choose to practice his religion in his own way. You have your nationality, so what is Judaism in all of this? Now, different from all the other things I mentioned, being Jewish is a race first, so you can't really get rid of it or choose to ignore it. And what we're doing is giving a tool set that can help each one of you actually face his Jewish identity in a better way and make his own selections in life, his own choices in life. In this lecture, we're going to talk about Jewish history as the first brick, the first thing that each one needs to know in order to even define what the Jewish identity is. And we're going to do something which has never done before. We're going to put 5,000 years of Jewish history in 1 hour. So you have a tough thing to go through. I hope you're going to do it well, and it's a crazy task, so I'm definitely not going to do it. This guy is going to do it. And I want to introduce Mr. Yuval Malakai. He's a history expert, a really good one. He's teaching the military about history of the militarism. He's teaching history teachers how to teach history in a better way. So that's your guy for history, and to make it even harder for him, we put a timer here, which apparently just moved out, but he will be back for 60 minutes, and we're going to challenge him whether he can do that. So, big applause.
Okay, so I have a mic in the back here. I'm just going to turn it on, and now you're going to hear me, because before you didn't hear a word probably. I have a loud voice. If I'm too loud or if there's something going on, just tell me. Because usually when I'm talking, I talk and I look at you, and if there's anything going on, tell me. So before the timer starts, I just want to say a few things. When you guys came to Israel, you've been here 4.5 months, right? You've been on trips and tours. You've seen the Wailing Wall, the Kotel. You've been to Masada? No? Who are you paying to? What's the? So. Where have you been? Like, monumental places. Jerusalem. Yerucham. Yad Vashem. So has anyone ever talked to you? What is it? Has anyone talked to you about Jewish history? Like, the timeline? What has happened here? Where are we now? Where's all this? The Wailing Wall. When did it was built, when it was destroyed? Have you ever heard anything about it? Yeah, you've heard it. Can you put it on a timeline of Jewish history? Well, it'd probably be a little difficult, right? And especially when we get into the details. And this is what happens to a lot of people that come here. They're shorter programs that take like 10 days or 20 days or whatever it is. And people come and they go to one place and they go to the other, and and at the end you say to them, can you tell me where everything is on a timeline? And they'll say, no, it's all one big shakshuka. It's a bit difficult. So what I'm going to try to do here today, we're going to try to talk to you about Jewish history, how it started, how it moved forward, some of the major events that took place, obviously because we can't talk about everything, and we're going to try to do it in 60 minutes. So before I start the timer, I just want to put us in the right place by finding the keyboard or by using the mouse, which is fine also. And this is our program, the Jewish Torch. We talk about Jewish identity to groups that, someone who's not necessarily like religious. It can also be secular Jews who have a Jewish identity, just like me, just like Rami, just like you guys, or most of you. And we try to look at this Jewish identity and understand it better. Understand it better by learning about our history, our common history, what our ancestors went through. So if we look here, we can see it's a bit small. So I'll read it to you. This is the Big Bang about 14 billion years ago. This is first time life appeared on this planet about 540 million years ago. Apes, 22 million years ago. And from the apes, about 150,000 years ago, the Homo sapiens appeared. And the Ice Age, when the Ice Age was over, basically, land cleared, people could start going places, animals roamed the earth, fruit was hanging from the tree. It was like being in one big supermarket, you know. You have your bisons, you have your other animals that you can hunt, your rabbits, you have the fruit hanging from the trees. It was a nice place to be in. People start to become hunters, and once they became hunters, they realized that stuff also grows in the ground. So what if I don't move from place to place to place? I just sit and grow my crops, and I learn how to keep them. And then once I, grow my crops, comes the evening, I sit down on my porch, kick back a few, right? And then I start to ask myself the questions. Who am I? What am I doing here? Did somebody turn off the AC? All the regular questions that people ask all the time. And they became farmers, and they started domesticating animals, having goats, learning to use their milk, and later on working animals, the donkey, the ox. And in the middle, this is where we start the story of the Bible. Earth was created. Now, imagine if you give if you give to the people back then a book that described exactly the history, they wouldn't know what the hell you're talking about. What are you talking about? What's a Big Bang, So the Bible tells a story that people can understand 6,000 years ago. And this is where we are. So I think about this, we turned off the AC completely? What? Oh, it's getting hot over here. It's on 25? Go down to 20. Because otherwise people here are going to start to... It was 20? 22? All right, 22 is good. 18. Who has got 18? 18 going once, twice. Yeah, 23 is good. 23 is perfect. No, not yet. Not yet. So, do you have any questions or anything to say? And during the talk, feel free if you have anything, if something's not clear or I didn't say, where exactly we are in the timeline, stop me and ask, or stop me and throw something at me. Whatever you feel like doing, feel free.
You have one question over there. Yeah, you do.
Who has a question? Good, I didn't start yet. Well, I was about to start the timer. Am I cheating? Why?
You just started.
No, because this is Jewish history. I've been talking about farmers and hunters. So we're going to start. 60 minutes.
Good job.
Yeah, it's a good question. By the way, I live quite close to Blue Bay, your hotel. So, I know where you're going back to. It's not a big deal. How long are you staying at Blue Bay, at the hotel? One night, just tonight. Last night, tonight. And then what happens afterwards? Jerusalem. Oh, that's going to be fun. For how long? 3 nights. And then it's back to Yerucham? Or you have more traveling to do? Are you ready? Did somebody go? All right. All right, here you go. The entire Jewish history in 60 minutes. So the first story in the Bible talks about Abraham. It's very hard to know, even archaeologically, if this is a story that can be 100% verified. But we do know that what the story tells about a man who heard a message that he should go to a new land and start a new community is very plausible. So Abraham starts the chain. After Abraham, there's Isaac, and after Isaac, we have Jacob. With Jacob, it changes a bit because Jacob, not only does he marry 2 women, but he also has children with their servants, which is, probably having a great life. But then again, you're one guy with 4 women, could be a little problem. So these are all the tribes. Now, how many tribes are there? 12. Wrong. Anybody? There are 13 tribes. 12 of them get land. We'll see it in a slide later on. Levi, anybody here last name Levi? L-E-V-I, L-E-V-Y, any form of Levi. These guys were assistants in the temple. So they don't get land because they work in the temple, but they're also a tribe. We have 13 tribes. So once we have, all these people, something happens in the land where Abraham comes to, which is Canaan, right, the land of Israel. There's hunger, there's famine, there's drought. So they're forced to migrate. And down in Egypt, by the Nile, there's a lot of water. So there's food. So they all move down, even though it's the promised land, they migrate, and they go to Egypt. In Egypt, remember, they're still not a unified people. You know, we think about the Hebrews leaving Egypt, Egypt, all of us, they're unified, the same people, maybe they're wearing yarmulkes or something, we have this image. They were very disunited. They were very different. There were different groups coming out of Egypt. And who has to lead these groups out of Egypt? A man that stutters. Moses, right? Can you imagine today if the president of the United States would stutter? Do you think, in reality, could he be president? Could it be possible that he was a president? I mean, it's very difficult to think about it. So Moses, not only does he have all these groups that he has to lead out of Egypt and bring them into a new land, and he's never been, on the road, doesn't know the way, doesn't have a GPS or a Waze or any other, device. And he has to take all these groups and come out of Egypt, and it's a difficult task. So Moses is most likely has some understanding of geography, has some understanding of how water works, and at a certain point he's able to cross the water, probably during a time of tide, and he's able to cross the water and lead the people out and escape Egypt. Jacob comes to Egypt 200 years earlier, 70 people. When they leave, tens of thousands of people, maybe even hundreds of thousands, maybe even 200,000, as the Bible describes.
The Bible describes 400,000. Now you say a different number. Why is it so?
Rashi.
What's that?
Saying what?
I think Rashi said
Rashi said that, it's 400,000 people.
So why is the difference?
So there's a lot of things in the Bible, like the years, the way they count the years, the way they count the people. It's very hard to exactly know, how many years passed from time to time or how many people actually went from place to place. But the idea of carrying, hundreds of thousands of people through the desert is something that when experts go through it, it's just not plausible, not possible to supply food to so many people. So today the numbers are estimated at, maybe several or tens of thousands of people, or maybe 100,000, maybe even 200,000 people, but still, you have to provide food for them. How do you go through the desert for so many years providing food for so many people? So this is an estimate. This is an estimate that people have today. And when they leave Egypt, what do they get? What do they get from the mountain? Moses goes up to the mountain, comes back with the Torah, right? Comes back with the Torah that is not finalized yet, because the Torah does tell about Moses' death later on. But there's a great movie called The History of the World with Mel Brooks. So he comes down and he has 3 tablets. And he comes to the people and says, I give you these 15. And then one of the tablets falls and shatters to the ground. So he looks at it. He looks back at the people. I give you these 10 commandments. And so maybe there were 15 at once. Moses brings them out of Egypt, and then we have the Torah. They go through the desert. They try to find the promised land. Very difficult to find it, but at the end, they manage to find it. And Moses stands on the mountains that are today located in Jordan. He looks and he sees the country and he passes away. He dies. In the Bible it says he was not allowed to enter into the country. I cannot imagine for a second what Moses went through leading all these people out of Egypt. Because at a certain point they're like, are we there yet? No. Are we there yet? No. And Moses probably has, a heck of a time. And he's considered actually one of the first, real leaders, maybe one of the most important people in the whole entire Bible or Old Testament. So Moses brings them into Israel, and there begins a period where the people are separated into their tribes. Now, the people that come out of Egypt remember what tribe they belonged to 200 years earlier when they left. So they remember the tribe they belonged to, and they each go into their own land, and they get their land, and all is well. So they get their land, and then starts a period that we call the Judges period. The Judges period is around 1270 to about 1000 BC. So we're moving on the timeline, right? We started with Abraham around 1700 BC, and now we're moving on the timeline. In Judges, we can see something very interesting. Now, the whole book of Judges works on one basis. The people have a great time. They forget God. God sends punishment, and once they get the punishment, they repent. A judge comes. A judge back then was like a champion, was like a leader, was a hero, and the judge, saves them from evil, from the enemy. And then they forget the whole thing, and another judge comes, and this is repetition. Do you know when women were first allowed to vote in Australia? Guess what year women were first allowed to vote in Australia? 1902. 1902. But in the Bible, And we're talking about the year around 1270, right? So rough calculation, we're talking about 3,000 years, more or less. Women were leading the people. They were leaders. We have Deborah up on top. We also have a woman named Yael, who was also in the book of Judges. These two women play a great role. They're like champions. And they play a role in the Judges period. And it's kind of strange because you think about society, it's very patriarchal. You know, the guy leads the tribe, leads the house. But over here we have women who are leading the nation. And one of the greatest stories that we don't have time to get into, otherwise I'll tell you the whole story about Samson. But in short, Samson, he doesn't lead the entire people. He usually works by himself. He's like a lone wolf. And he marries 3 women. They're all Philistine women. The second one was a whore. So can you imagine, you know, the leader of the state of Israel marrying a Palestinian whore? I mean, it wouldn't work. I don't think it would work. But this is the story of Samson, and he gets 4 chapters. I mean, this guy has a story that, you know, you look at it and, you know, not 100% relevant, but he gets 4 chapters in the book. And after Judges, we go into the king's period. Who is this? David. David is the second king. The first is Saul. Saul commits suicide. The first king of Israel commits suicide, takes a sword, and plunges it through his own stomach to avoid being caught and tortured by the Philistines, who control the earth, and who nag, and they go into Israel, into the land where all the tribes live, and they do whatever they want. You know why? Why they're able to do this? Because the tribes are not united. They're not together. They're fighting against each other all the time. And David does something amazing. He manages to unite all these Jews that are living, you know, together and, you know, fighting each other, and the enemy's attacking them all the time. So David is able to unite them. David is a great, you know, great hero in the Bible. He has a lot of things that he's really good at. He's a poet. He's a warrior. You know, you look at him, he's, you know, a womanizer. But he also has a lot of faults. The interesting thing about David is, you know, that David tries to get a woman who's married, and her husband is his war minister. So he goes on these, you know, these tricks that he plays on him so that he'll die in battle and then he can take his wife. Can you think about a king in the Middle Ages? If he wanted to take some woman, would he count anyone? You know, would he care if it's a wife? He'd just take her. But David has to go around, you know, all these moral laws that were created because this is a society that is maybe a little different from other societies around it. It's a moral society. And then David takes the kingdom. You can see how huge this kingdom gets. From a small kingdom, you know, with just the 12 tribes, you can see how big it gets. And once it gets that big, it also gets very rich. And David's son, his name is Solomon. So Solomon was a wise man. The Bible says he was one of the wisest people to have ever lived. And he gets plans. He looks at plans. Plans of what? What did he build? The first temple. Very good. You guys are good. So the first temple. So he builds, you know, David conquers Jerusalem. Solomon builds it, and he builds a huge temple in the middle. It's a glorious temple. You know, it's an amazing temple. And we're talking, again, we're talking about years where the kings were under one kingdom. But then something happens. The people close to Jerusalem, you know, where the temple is, all the time people, you know, they go to Jerusalem, they have to go, right? It's part of the religious ceremony. So they walk up to Jerusalem, they pass through all these villages and the cities and towns and the places around Jerusalem, they, you know, they make some money, make some profit. They're important. Everybody looks up to them. They're great. But what about the people up north? They're taxed very heavily to, you know, to finance this building of a city, of the temple, but they get nothing. And when Solomon's son comes into power, they find time and they rise up. And the kingdom of Israel is split into the kingdom of Judah, with Jerusalem as its capital, and the kingdom of Israel with Samaria, or actually it's Shechem, city of Shechem, or Nablus today, as the capital city. How are we doing in time? 10 minutes. Good. Now, the thing about that, the two kingdoms lived right next to each other for about 200 years. These 200 years. Now, you know, American people, when you ask them about the Civil War, how long did it last? It was the Civil War in the States was crazy. It was a bloody war where, you know, brother killed brother. It lasted for 4 years. 4 years. The kingdom of Israel and Judah, or Judea, were at war with each other. Not straight war, you know, for but bloody war, where people killed and tortured one another for on and off for 200 years. 200 years, Jews killed Jews. They also made pacts with their neighbors to kill the Jews. And a bloody war ravaged here in the country. And at the end, when these two kingdoms, instead of being united, are fighting against each other, it cannot end well. And the kingdom of Israel is attacked by the Assyrians, who live in the east. I'll show you in a second on the map. You'll see it. And during 3 different periods, they're taken away to exile with the purpose of integrating into the kingdom of Assyria, but making them forget that they were ever Jewish in the first place. The kingdom of Judea goes through a similar story. When Babylon attacks Jerusalem, what happens to the temple? Destroyed, burned to the ground, right? So they go through the same story. And when the temple is destroyed and the people are exiled to Babylon, something happens that the Babylonians didn't expect. And you see, this is what we talked about, the people, this is the lost 10 tribes. Have you heard the term, the lost 10 tribes? So the lost 10 tribes are actually, something that happens here, where the people, the Assyrian people, they exile all of these, the Jewish people that live up north, and these people get lost. Some of them move down south to Judah, to Judea, but most of them are never heard from again. How many were there? It's very difficult to know. Historians argue about the numbers all the time. Tens of thousands of people, most likely. And 200 years later, this temple is destroyed and the people are sent to Babylonia. Here, something amazing happens that is happening for the first time. It's happening for the first time. It's something amazing. And what happens here is that the people, when they're exiled, and we're talking about 586, the year 586 BC. Watch, we're moving forward. You know what's going on here? Where are they sitting? They're sitting by a river, right? And they look depressed. So do you know, there was a band, maybe you know this song. There was a band, Bonnie M, long time ago. On the rivers by the rivers of Babylon. Right? You know that song? Where we sit down. So there's a song, actually, that is taken from the book of Psalms, and it goes like this. On the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and cried when we remembered Zion. On willow branches we hung our harps. For our captors asked us for song, and our tormentors for joy. Sing us a song of Zion. How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? If I forget Jerusalem, right? And this is the famous thing that every Jewish person says on their wedding day. If I forget Jerusalem, I shall forget my right hand. My tongue should stick to its clave. If I forget thee, if I forget to mention Jerusalem during the happiest of my days. Right? And this is something that every Jew says when they get married, at least in Israel. And the Jews sit in Babylon, and they don't want to become Babylonian. And this is crazy. Because, they take all the people, they move them out of the country, and no, these people stay Jewish. What, are you crazy? You stay Jewish? Doesn't make sense. But not long after, another empire comes into play, the Persian Empire. And they're even bigger than the Babylonians. And the Jews come to the leader of the Persian Empire, Cyrus the Great. Not Miley Cyrus, Cyrus the Great. And they tell him, listen, we're not from here. We don't belong here. We have a home. It's in Jerusalem. And he says, oh, so you want to go back to Jerusalem? And you say you'll be loyal to me? Great, go. And then they say, what? You're serious? You mean we can take our stuff and leave and go? And the king says, yeah. So they say, okay, great. So they take their luggage and they start to walk. And they say to the people, all right, guys, we got a free ticket to Israel. Let's go. And they start to walk. And then they turn around, and the people are sitting down. Hey, guys, didn't you hear what I said? I said, let's go. We got a free ticket to Israel. The king said, you can go, we're free. I don't know how long it's going to last. Let's go. And they start to walk, and they stop, and they look back, and everybody's sitting down. What the hell's going on? And this, guys, is the first time diaspora, the sitting of Jewish people outside of the state of Israel, on their own free will, is taking place, is happening. And it was very instrumental in building the second temple for 2 reasons. The first is that they sent a lot of money to Israel to build the temple. And the second is they were able to influence the leaders of Babylon, of Persia, to favor the Jews. Because if you're far away and somebody comes to the king and says, these Jews, they're planning something against you. So the king says, all right, where are there Jews? No Jews? All right, let's go get them. But if you're close to the center of things and people know you, say, I know Jews. They're not going to do anything. So this is the first time the diaspora works. And the diaspora continued to work for years, for thousands of years afterwards. And during World War I, the First World War, the people here in Israel, there were tens of thousands of people living here. They're on the verge of starvation. Literally. People were dying from starvation. There was no food. And Americans sent money to Israel, and they were able to, somehow, by the thread they were hanging, until the British and the Australians took the country back from the Turks. So diaspora has been enormously important for the state of Israel. So we go back in how are we doing? 42 minutes. Are we doing all right? We're doing all right. You guys are all right? You're with me? All right, good. So 515 BC, we're rebuilding the temple. It's not as great as it was during Solomon's time, but it's all right. Jewish people, how is the building? It's all right. It's not, no, that's all right. So 515 BC, and we end with the biblical time. And now we go into a different period. This period is a crazy period of revolts, of Jewish fighters, Jewish warriors. And it starts with the Maccabees, exactly. Alexander the Great, you all heard about him. Around 300 BC, he conquers, this entire area, conquers everything. But he doesn't leave a successor, a heir. So his generals fight over the territory, and several different empires are created. The Ptolemaic Empire, Seleucid Empire that lives over here. And these guys are fighting. So the Seleucids, they say, okay, let's go down to Israel, and then we can go into Egypt, fight the Ptolemaic Empire. So at first they do, and they see, nice Jews like you, and they say, hello, we are the Seleucid Empire. We mean no harm, It's all right, you guys can stay Jewish. And, one leader after the other. The fourth leader says, what do you mean you guys are Jewish? Haven't you heard about Hellenic culture? We wrestle. We do all kind of crazy things, Come join us. Forget your Jewish, forget all these Jewish things that you guys are doing, not eating pork or all these, lighting candles, whatever you guys are doing that's crazy. Forget that. Come join us. We're better. And the Jewish people say, no, we want to stay. And then a war erupts. And the war that erupts is not between, two tribes or, two countries of the same strength. The Seleucids are an empire. They're called Greek, the Greek Empire, Hellenistic Empire. And they have a huge army. It's very strong. And this army is equipped with soldiers, best clothing one can buy, and war elephants. Now, I don't know if you've ever fought a war elephant. This is what a war elephant looks like. Can you see it? So-so. With the lighting, it's difficult to see. But this is what a war elephant looks like. It's not fun to run into this thing in a dark alley. And probably on a field as well. You get trampled pretty quickly. And on top of the elephant, there's usually some kind of a stand where people can be on top and shoot arrows from the top. So it's a great machine. And they start to go through the land and they get people to become Hellenic or Greek until one family in a place called Modi'in, which is close to Jerusalem, says, enough. We will not abide by your laws. We will not become Hellenic and forget our Jewish heritage. This is where you guys stop right now. And a war erupts between them and the Seleucid Empire. And the Seleucid Empire finds an interesting fact. You know what they find? Jews don't fight when? On Shabbat, on the Sabbath. And when they find it, they say, okay, no problem. We'll wait 6 days, and we get on the Sabbath, and we destroy them. And this is exactly what they do. And when this family hears about this, the Maccabees, they say, well, this is crazy. We must fight on the Sabbath. And they change the law, and they say, we will now start to fight on the Sabbath. And one of the leaders, the family leader, Matityahu, or Matt, we can call him short, he starts, a lot of people join him. A lot of people join forces with them. And at the end, they'll come to power and they'll write their own history. And this is the best thing. If you guys ever, need to write something about yourself, that's the best thing. Napoleon did it. The Maccabees did it. You guys can do it as well. It will be really good for you because it will tell you all the good things that you've done and all the good things you've created. And the war takes place. It's a crazy war, but at the end, there's several rounds to it. It's not just one war. We won, let's eat. It's not a regular Jewish holiday. It's a war, then there's another war. They lose, they win, they lose. But at the end, they managed to get this huge empire out of, remember, they're a small family located near Jerusalem. They get to be a huge empire. And there's a great story in the book of Maccabees. The book of Maccabees is part of the Christian books. It's not in the Bible. But there's a great story. When Judah the Maccabees, the leader, of this entire Jewish army, small army, or whatever it is, comes to the top of the mountain, they look down, oh my God, look at this. Thousands and thousands of enemy soldiers. And the soldiers become scared. And they say, we're tired, and we're hungry, and we're thirsty, and we can't fight like this. Now, when someone tells you something like this, you can do two things. You can yell at them, who the hell you think you are? We're fighting here. What are you, crazy? What are you, you can go this way. But Judah the Maccabee doesn't do it. He talks to them very quietly. He says, I understand. I'm scared and afraid as much as you are. But if we let these people pass, they won't just get to us. They'll get to our wives and to our children. And that we cannot accept. But we will fight them not head on, not straight. We'll fight them with tricks. And at night, they go to their camp and they create such havoc in the Seleucid camp that the warriors run away, literally run away. So they're able to win some war and lose some war, but what they do here, that's crazy, is every place that they conquer, they tell the people, you must convert to be Jewish. And if the people don't want to, they force them to convert to Judaism. So they enlarge the kingdom and the number of Jews out there by, before being just a small place to this huge kingdom. And one of the people that comes out of this, forced conversions is Herod, King Herod, whose parents are not Jewish. His mother is an Arabian princess. And this Herod builds, the magnificent temple that when people came to visit, they said, there is no building like this anywhere in the world. And remember, the guy who builds the great temple, his mother, is an Arabian princess. So this is, you see how crazy Middle East is. It's never easy to understand. After the Seleucids, there's a vacuum. The Romans come into play. City of, who knows? Caesarea. This is the city of Caesarea. I don't know if you've been here. You've been to Caesarea? Yes. You've been there. Okay, good. Don't eat at the restaurant. They're expensive and the service is horrible. Just heard it yesterday. And after Caesarea, they have also great inventions and great buildings. This is the Colosseum. And this is something else. This is Bath, UK. Obviously, you understand why it's called Bath, UK. And every invention that the Roman have and every public structure is great. Well, except maybe this one. The benefit to this thing is that you don't need to tweet your friends what's going on because you just tell them. And the jokes, you can imagine the jokes, right? Hey, guys, did you hear about this? About what? What the hell's going on? So this is the kind of life that people lived back then. And the Romans, they're very, very strong. They're an extremely they're an army with the amount of soldiers that they have, the training that they go through. This is not just another army, of some people rising up and saying, all right, we have a good army, and let's go fight. These people are trained from birth to fight, to give their life to the Roman Empire. And these are the people here. So they're in control of Jerusalem, and Herod is there. And then when Herod goes away, Roman councils are basically, in charge of Jerusalem. And what do, you know how the saying goes, right? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And this is what happens, all these, the Roman people in charge of Jerusalem and the area, they start to take money, they want more money, and then, at the end, the Jewish people say, they tell the Jewish people, you cannot obey this law, you cannot obey this law. There's they're fighting a guy named Gallus, and he tells them, You guys got to do a bunch of things, disagreement, and finally he comes to Jerusalem, to the gates of Jerusalem. So the Jewish people say, you know what? I'll tell you this. We'll send out our rabbis outside the wall. They'll talk to the guy. They'll calm him down. And once he's calmed down, it's going to be okay. And this delegate goes out of the walls, and when they're out of the walls, they're killed. They're simply trampled. And the Jewish people cannot accept it. They start a revolt. But the problem is that the Jewish people, at that time, they're very disunited. They're fighting between themselves. There are 24 sects, 24 different sects. You can bring it from here. You can bring it from here. 24 different sects of Jews. And there are several sects that are fanatic. You know, people that walk with a knife in here. So, you know, anytime they see someone they don't like, they can take the knife and stab them. And if they go into a Jewish village that they don't agree with too much, boom, death as well. So you cannot fight anyone. You know, when you're this united, you cannot fight anyone. And the Romans, not only do they beat them, after a little bit of fighting goes on, they beat them, but they also do what? Destroy the temple once again. And it's written in the book of Oy Vey, the second temple has been destroyed. And when the temple is destroyed, this is a problem, because look at our timeline. For 1,000 years we've had the temple. Jewish life knows nothing but how to be Jewish around a temple. It's very difficult to do something else. The people that are thrown out of Judea and are brought as slaves into Rome, they bring with them artifacts from the temple, from Bet HaMikdash. And this you can see in Rome today. Arch of Titus. Go to Rome, Arch of Titus, and you see this. Jewish slaves carrying the menorah. They're carrying all kinds of things that, from where people used to sacrifice animals. And even this is a coin. It says Judea Capita, captured Judea. A woman sitting by a tree, crying. A soldier, Roman soldier over here, looking at her, probably smiling a little bit. We even put out a coin to show you that Judea lost. And the Romans believe that now will be better, but the Jewish people have a problem. If everything Jewish about us was around the temple, what do we do now when there's no temple? How do we stay Jewish when there's no temple to pray? How can I go to I can't go to Jerusalem. And I used to go during 3 holidays. What the hell do I do? And this rabbi, he understands, even before the revolt starts, that we're going to have a problem. And he escapes Jerusalem inside a coffin, pretends to be dead. And he goes and he starts to write a whole bunch of new rules and new laws of how the Jewish people will continue to be Jewish without a temple. So all of the things that we used to do in Jerusalem, blow the shofar, take the 4 species on the holiday of Sukkot to Jerusalem, now we're going to do them locally. And instead of sacrificing things, we're going to do acts of kindness. So religion advances, and you see, when you think about Judaism, you think about, religion that has always been there. Maybe you see Hasidics, a lot of Hasidics. You think, oh, these are religious Jews, they existed for... No, the Jewish religion has been changing over and over and over. And what you see now as Judaism, the people that you see now as religious people, it's a phase in Judaism. And Judaism has always been a phase. So, halfway through, can we get a break to ask them, how they're doing? And can we do a 1-minute break so I can get some water and drink and the time doesn't run out? Yeah. All right. Give me 1 minute. 1 minute.
Nice of you.
All right. All right, so how are we doing? You guys all right? נראה לי שכן. נמשיך? Okay. All right. I'm ready to go. Another half hour. You guys ready? You with me? שמתי את המים פה. איך שומעים לך סאונד? בסדר? הוא עובד, אבל הוא לא קרוב מספיק. It's always sounds like, you know, when the people go away from the microphone, it sounds the same thing. Okay, so are we ready to begin? Continue? Right, so this guy, Ben Zakkai, writes again all the laws of how to be Jewish. And hey, guess what? Another revolt. About 70 years later, another revolt breaks out. This time, you know, the Roman army is not going to take, you know, he understands who he has to deal with. So he sends huge legions. And the legion in the book, you know, today we see Roman books. And we see the legion goes from Egypt, enters Israel, disappears. The entire Roman legion. Where the hell did it disappear to? Well, this revolt is so successful. And it's so great. It's called the Bar Kokhba revolt. Now, if you guys, I don't know how many people here are going in, you know, going to be 5 months or 10 months. You must crawl through the Bar Kokhba tunnels. You must do it. It's an amazing feeling. And this is him, you know, many years later. He's a nice guy. And what he understands is that, you know, you cannot fight the Roman army, you know, face to face. They're going to kill us. So what he does, he devises a unique system of tunnels that are going to be built under many of the villages in Judea that are participating in this revolt. And these tunnels are not going to be just regular tunnels. They're going to be very, very smart, the way they're going to be built. There's a lot of ingenuity that has been put here. And these tunnels, not only are they very narrow, so a Roman soldier with all the armor, you know, cannot crawl through them. He has to take off the armor. And then even if there are 1,000 people, it's just one soldier every time. One soldier every time. So the one soldier goes through the cave, and then he goes, you know, and he crawls, and the cave gets darker, and it gets darker. You know, and suddenly it's like, you know, cannot see anything. And he hears himself panting, you know. And suddenly he sees either an opening, you know, he's not used to the darkness, so he's looking, or, look at this. Imagine there's no ladder here, so he doesn't know how deep the cave is. And at that moment, when he's searching for his next thing that he's going to do, Jewish rebels can jump on him and, you know, neutralize him. Let's be, you know, politically correct. And there's a lot of different things that they did in the caves to allow them to fight the Romans. They would go in, they would go out of the caves, they would shoot some arrows, run into the caves, the Roman would chase them, and they would kill them. This Roman army, these people that are trained to fight since birth. And after 2 years, the Romans are not able to win the war. The Jewish people, a small nation of Jews, you know, this entire huge Roman Empire is causing so much havoc, such a headache, that they say, all right, guys, enough. Who is the best Roman leader? It's a guy out in England. They bring him, and he slowly starts to devise a system where he takes branches, lights the branches, throw them into the tunnels, and the smoke that goes through the tunnels forces everybody to come out. And slowly, village after village, not only do they get the people out of the tunnel and kill them, they also destroy the village. And historians that lived back then, Cassius Dio, used to say that 900 and something villages. 900 villages were destroyed in this great revolt. And people, you know, said after a while, 900, yeah, it's too much. Tunnels, there were no tunnels. What is he talking about? This Meshuggah talking about tunnels. What tunnels? And then only 40 years ago, people that were digging in the area found the tunnels. And they said, wow, you know, this guy was making sense. So this is the Bar Kokhba revolt. And the Romans decide to do something else. They say, you know, every time there's a revolt in this place, and you people revolt against us, it's the same thing over and over again. We're going to do something completely different this time. We're going to take the name Judea out of our maps, and we're going to punish you. We're going to call this area after a people that no longer exist, the Philistines. And they changed the name of Judea to Palestina, or Palestine, as a punishment to the Jewish people. So how many people think Palestine is a punishment to the Jewish people today? So it's a Roman punishment that still exists today. And this is what they do. And the revolt ends. All of the Jews that are living inside Judea and Israel are, you know, sent all over the place. They capture all of the leaders, the rabbis, and they torture them to death. Literally torture them to death. Some of the descriptions of how they did this are just too crazy. And so begins a period of diaspora. We're talking about, you know, 140 AD. We're moving up all the time. We're talking about diaspora. And how does diaspora work? So the first place that they go to is somewhere that, there's a Jewish community already that exists in that place already from the first temple period. And they live around, Mesopotamia, or Iraq, today's Iraq. And all these red dots are Jewish villages. Doesn't matter the names. I know you guys can't read them. But all these places are places with a large Jewish population. And there are 3 triangles, if you see here, 1, 2, and 3. These are large yeshiva, Jewish schools that existed, where people studied. And this becomes the center of world Jewry, for maybe the second time. Because we had the first time in the first temple, and this is the second time. So this becomes the center of the world, the New York of the first millennium. And here, all of the writers and all of the big honchos, one of the top 10 guys in Jewish history, Rabbi Saadia Gaon, Saadia the genius, he writes in Hebrew, but in Arabic. So he writes in Arabic, the letters are in Arabic, but the sound is Hebrew. He translates the Bible. He writes the first book that explained the Torah and the Talmud, which is basically writings that are meant to put the oral traditions into a book. There are a lot of oral traditions. So people write these things, and you can see, the rabbis, they're talking, and the Jewish people flourish in Mesopotamia. And they're under Muslim rule. Remember, under Muslim rule. And the Muslims, they also go to North Africa. From North Africa, they go into Spain. They conquer Spain. And in Spain, there's a huge caliphate. A Muslim caliphate, a Muslim kingdom. And the Jews that flourish, they rise into unbelievable positions. They're free to do whatever they want. So Jews become physicians, astronomers, doctors. They become slave traders. They become warriors. They become advisors. They become writers. They can do whatever they want. So they rise into great power in Spain, Muslim Spain. One of the guys that rises probably into the most powerful position in that era is Samuel Hanagid, the prince, Samuel the prince. And this guy, he's born to poor parents. And he learns how to write. He has a beautiful handwriting. So he moves from place to place, and finally the king of Granada, it's a huge Spanish kingdom down south, hears about him. He becomes his advisor. He becomes his war minister. Can you imagine one of the greatest kingdoms of Muslims, and the guy who heads the Muslim army is Jewish? It sounds almost unbelievable. It sounds like a fairy tale. And not only that, he becomes also a top statesman, like a prime minister. So the prime minister, or the person second in command to the king of this crazy kingdom, is Jewish. It's almost an unbelievable story. About 9 years ago, a comic book came out that describes his life. There's actually a comic book that you can read about his life. And you can see here, this is, Muslim armies fighting. And among these armies, look here, look closely. You can see Star of David. These are Jewish units that are fighting together with the Muslims. So in Spain, their Jewish life and Jews rise to high power. They have a great time in Spain. They're not persecuted like in other places, except for some periods when fanatics, Muslim fanatics, rise into power, and then they come and say to people, you must convert to Islam or I kill you. It's very simple. And some of the Jews that run away, or one of the Jews that runs away is Maimonides, the Rambam. He writes, a set of 14 books that describe every Jewish rule there is, from the Torah, from the time of the temple, from the time of being with a temple, without a temple, everything. But not only that, he is, and the ladies in the crowd probably would find interest, he's also a physician, and he writes about diets. And even today, there's a Rambam diet, Maimonides diet. And this diet describes how to eat correctly, how to live your life without too much stress, how to digest correctly, and all this, 800 years ago. And everything that he wrote today, almost everything still stands, which is great. So we move in time. We're almost up to 1500 AD, and we're doing really well. 20 minutes to go. So Christianity, it rises. It gains ground. From the time of Jesus, who was, and by the way, Jesus was Jewish, without doubt. How do we know this? Because Jesus' first miracle, when he finds out that he has powers, he's at a wedding, and his mother is with him, and they're sitting down, and suddenly the waiter the main waiter comes to him and says, we got a problem. We ran out of wine. No alcohol. Can you imagine a wedding with no alcohol? And Jesus' mother says to him, all right, do it. And he says, do what? What do you want from me? I don't know what. And she says, stop playing around, do it. He says, I don't know what you want from me. I have no clue. She said, all right, you know what? Forget it. Strong Jewish mother. There's no other way to explain it. And she tells the waiter, bring us 3 vases. And he brings the vases, he puts them on a table full of water. And she says to him, now you do it. Now you do it. And he says, all right, leave me alone. It's like Howard from The Big Bang Theory, right? It's like, all right, I'll do it. And he performs his first miracle, and he turns the water into wine. And anyone that can turn water into wine, I'll follow him. And that's, what happens. A lot of people follow him. And so Jesus dies around 32 AD. Christianity evolves slowly, and there's a lot of different ideas about what being a Christian is, how the Trinity works, what is the Holy Spirit. And they meet in a conference to decide what Christianity is actually, how it's structured, what's the role of each participant, when the holidays are going to take place. And once they decide this, 323 AD, 380, the Roman Empire adopts Christianity. And some 700 years later, the Muslims that take Jerusalem and the Christians in Europe say, this would be great. If we go to Israel, we kick the Muslims out, take their money, take the empire. So at 1095, crusades against the Muslims begin. The people who go on these crusades are not always the most intelligent people. They can be peasants, they can be farmers. These are people that say, all right, we're going on a crusade to Israel. Let's go. And then someone tells them, where are you going? Do you have a map? I don't have a map. God will direct me to the place. And they start to walk. And they have no clue where they're going. And they're walking. Suddenly they see a Jewish village. And they say, I remember the sermon. A Jewish guy gave away Jesus. Let's kill the Jews. It doesn't matter that, Jesus was preaching to Jews, all of the first followers, the people who spread Christianity at first were Jewish. They don't care. And several Jewish communities during the First Crusade are eliminated, annihilated, destroyed, burned to the ground. A lot of times Jews go into the synagogue to hide, and there's nobody to protect them. Nobody to protect them. And there's also blood libels, stories about Jews, during Passover, they take children, they use the blood to make matzah. And there's usury. Christians are not allowed to lend money to other Christians with interest rate. And that sucks because I have my money. I can do several things with it. Now you want to borrow my money and I'm not going to see anything out of it? Forget it. So why would I want to lend you money? Jews are the only ones who can lend money with an interest rate. So they become money lenders. And when you become a money lender, obviously, you don't have that good of a name. Look at, rich people today, or tycoons as they call them. It's not always great. So Jews don't have a good name. Anti-Semitism is rampant in Europe. And in 1290, Jews are expelled from England. For a period of about 300 years, 300, 400 years, Jews are expelled from England. Then they're expelled from France. The French king wants the property that the Jews own so he can pay some of his debts. So he just kicks about 100,000 Jews out of France. In 1391, there are several incidents in Spain where Jewish communities are destroyed. In Barcelona, the entire Jewish community disappears off the face of the earth. They're killed, every one of them. And it continues, Christian Europe, Jews don't have that great of a time. In 1492, the Jews are expelled from the one place where they had it good. For 1,500 years, they lived in Spain. They could do anything they want. They were physicians, astronomers, they were warriors, they could do anything they want. They got along well with their neighbors. They had a great time. Some historians wrote that the blood of Spain flowed in their veins. And from Spain, 200,000 Jews about are expelled. But they're not allowed to take anything with them. No money, no property. So all these Jews who, through the years, they have a house, they have some money, they leave as beggars. And out of the 200,000 people, only several tens of thousands survive. It's a very catastrophic event in Jewish history. Many of them move with the red arrows to North Africa, where they set up communities. So this is how you find Moroccan Jews, Algerian Jews, Tunisian Jews, Egyptian Jews. They move to Africa. And here you see people going to the Balkans, also going to the Greece area. The Turkish, in Turkey, they accept the Jews warmly. The Sultan in Turkey says, who is this crazy guy who kicked the Jews out of Spain and enriched my country? So he welcomes the Jews and he puts out an official decree saying you must treat the Jews well in Turkey. So the Jewish community in Turkey grows. Here, this is Turkey, this area. And we continue on to the year 1500 as we're moving along. What was invented around that period? Printing press, very good. So the printing press, you know, this thing that you press and a paper comes out with letters on it and it's made into books very, very quickly. The printing press, ideas start to spread rapidly throughout Europe. And when ideas spread, obviously you have modern times coming in. People start to talk. And one guy says to everybody, you know, I read the book of Zohar, Kabbalah, you know, this book that talks about mysticism, souls, how heaven and earth look, you know, the nature of God. And I got to tell you this. I got a message, guys. I got a message. I'm the Messiah. I am the Messiah. I'm here. And Jews have always wanted the Messiah to come already. You know, they pray for it. And there's a great story around the year 1000 in Baghdad. Two guys, two sages come to the community. And they say to the community, we just came from the land of Israel, and we got news for you. Gather everybody around in the evening. We'll tell you what happened. They gather the whole community, and the guys tell them, listen, Messiah arrived. And people start to clap and cheer, yeah, yeah. And they say, tonight, he's going to come and take you. Tonight, he's going to come and take you, and you're going to fly to Israel. Before that, all of your, you know, jewelry, money, whatever it is, you have to put it in bags with your names on it. So when you come to Israel, you'll get it. The mothers, they go crazy because, you know, some of these, they're feeding babies. So they say, wait, I'm feeding my baby. Is my baby going to fly by himself, or am I going to fly together with my baby? And they start asking all these, you know, questions, burning questions. How long is the flight to Israel? You know, what food are they serving? You know, is it first class, coach? All the good questions that people want. And the two sages that, you know, they're brilliant. They know everything, and people test them. You know, they know the holy books. They say to them, tonight at midnight, when the moon rises, go stand on the roofs of your houses, wear something green so the Messiah can recognize you, and just, you know, gently flap with your hands, and you start flying all the way to Israel. And when the moon rises, the Jews of Baghdad go to the roofs after they gave their money and jewelry to these two sages, and they stand on the roofs, and they start to flap their arms. And the Muslim people look outside there, and when they go, the Jews have gone crazy. Something happened. And they flap their arms throughout the night, and then the sun rises. And then, you know, people say, oh my God, we've been tricked. And they go to find the two sages, they're nowhere to be found. The Muslims, since then, call that year the year of the flight. You know, that year when Jews were standing on the rooftops trying to fly. So Jews have always wanted the Messiah to come. They've always, you know, anticipated it. And when this guy says he's the Messiah, everyone is so happy and thrilled. And they follow him and they listen to him. And they, you know, finally he's here. And then the Sultan catches him and says to him, I heard you're saying you're the Messiah. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to kill you or become Muslim. What is your choice? You know, the guy's testing. And the guy says, no, don't kill me. You know, I'm not going to be, I'll become Muslim. And when he becomes Muslim, thousands and thousands of Jews, you know, their heart breaks. Their values, the thing they believed in, is no longer here, disappears. They don't know what to do. And to add insult to injury, in the Ukraine, Cossacks, and also Ukrainian peasants, they take up arms, you know, and they go against the Jews, and there's pogroms, or violent riots. You'll hear that word now a few times. And Jews don't know what to do. Several of the poor Jews, they don't even know the Torah anymore. They don't know how to read Hebrew. You know, they're moving away from religion. And finally, one guy comes up with the idea, and he says this. He says, the Jewish religion is a fun religion, and it should be accessible to anyone. We've got to do something that people will remember that the Jewish religion is joyous, is a fun religion. It's a religion that doesn't see different classes of people. You know, if you're rich, you should study Torah. If not, you should work. No, everybody should be able to read. Everybody should be able to write. And he starts Hasidic Judaism, the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov, the man with the good name. Right? 720 AD, Hasidic Judaism starts. You got 10 minutes? I'm good. So now, when you look today in the street, you know, you're born into this reality when you see Hasidic Jews. I lived in a town in the U.S. where, you know, the town was basically entirely Hasidic. And, you know, you grow up this way, you say, wow, you know, these guys have probably been this way, you know, for thousands of years. No. It's a new form of Judaism that has only existed for about 300, 400 years. And not only Hasidic Judaism comes into play, but also the Enlightenment period. Ideas start to spread. Jews ask questions. This guy is named Spinoza. At the age of 23, because he has all these crazy ideas, he's excommunicated from the Jewish community. And another guy who is responsible for what you guys are doing right now, being modern Jews who don't only study holy books all day, but work in different professions, in civilian professions. You can study history, you can study anything you want, you can do anything you want in life and still be Jewish. The guy who comes up with these ideas, Moses Mendelssohn. And he talks about secular Judaism. Now, the good thing that happens to Moses Mendelssohn is that his children say, you know, my father, he's a genius, we're going to follow him. 4 of his 6 children convert to Christianity. And so, you know, the people who are against Mendelssohn say, you know, just look at that guy, we don't have to say anything else. And this is 1760. And around the year 1800, countries in Europe start to tell the Jews, you don't have to live inside a ghetto anymore, inside an encircled, closed neighborhood. You can go out, you can do whatever you want, you can learn, you can go to school, you can be a good civilian of the country. And Jews start to move out, they start to become educated and learn history, and slowly Jews become regular people, just like everybody else. This is something that happened later on. It's called the Cairo Gniza. I'll just say a word about it. Around that time, 1800, you know, slowly there are rumors that in Egypt, something is found which is, you know, treasure to the Jewish people. So Jewish texts usually you don't throw away into the garbage, or, you know, you put them somewhere and then you bury them. Or in Egypt, in a certain synagogue, for thousands of years, all Jewish texts that came to the synagogue and, you know, was a little destroyed, or they put it up in the attic. And that attic is found. When it's found, it's treasure. You know, you see writings about Jewish life that took place for thousands of years. And suddenly, you know, you get to understand what was life like. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I feel like Forrest Gump. That's all I have to say about that. Now, Jews, when, you know, all these persecutions take place, the king of Poland says, welcome to my kingdom. And a lot of Jews move up to Eastern Europe. You can see here, the black dots represent villages that have over 50% Jewish population. The white dots represent over 25% Jewish population. Just look at this, cities and towns all over Eastern Europe are full of Jews. Millions of Jews live in Eastern Europe. This is one of the only places they can be, and they can, you know, they're not safe, especially not when the pogroms start around 1820, 1830, and then 1880. Pogroms start. They're violent riots against Jews. I would come into your community where you live, and I would kill you because I feel like it, or because I thought that, you know, you're Jewish and you deserve to die. And this is what happens. Lots of pogroms. The Jewish people, they view this as a catastrophe, and they don't know what to do. And when these pogroms take place, there's a huge, you know, commotion in the Jewish community. And there's the first Zionist Congress, when people say, you know, what should we do? What, we're going to go on living in Europe? This is our, you know, this is what we have? Or we're going to set up our own country in the land of Israel? And a lot of these Jews have relatives that live in the United States, or they move to the United States, and they start to immigrate out of Eastern Europe into the United States. Now watch this, amazing graph. This is a lower East Side in New York. You know, it's all Jewish, lots of Jewish writings on the buildings. But watch this graph. This is the number of Jews in the United States. You could see around 1880, 1890. We're talking about maybe tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands. Nothing. I mean, very small amount. And look what happens with just, you know, 20 years, 30 years. 4 million, 5 million Jews in the United States. It's huge, you know, migration over to the U.S. And World War I, World War II, ooh, we're good on time. World War I, what happens is Jews live in different countries, right? So what happens when two countries are fighting against one another and two Jews live, let's say, in villages that are neighboring to each other and they're friends? They must fight against themselves. And many Jews fight against other Jews. You know, we don't have one country that we can fight for. We cannot all be on the same side. And if you lived, let's say half of you lived in town Schminzik in Poland, and the rest of you lived in a town called Fulgenberg in Austria, you would fight against each other if these two towns actually went to war. And there's, you know, many pictures from this war showing Jewish people in Austria-Hungary. You can see here it says Hanukkah 1916, and you can also see the Jewish Brigade. This is a brigade of Jews that volunteered to the British Army. And here they're in Jerusalem, 1917, when the British freed Jerusalem. So this is World War I. During this war, about 12,000 Jews die. 12,000 Jews die in this war. And about 100,000 Jews serve in the army. Many of them won the Iron Cross, which is like the Medal of Honor. And still, during the war, don't think that anti-Semitism appeared in Germany out of nowhere. Suddenly everybody's anti-Semite. No, it always existed in Germany. During World War I, there was something called Judenzählung, the count of the Jews. The Germans wanted to count how many Jews are serving in units in the German army because there were rumors that Jews were helping the enemy. And so it was very easy after the war, when the Germans wanted to blame someone, to blame the Jews. Even though they won medals of honor and they served in every unit and they gave up their lives for this country, it was very easy to draw this picture of this Jew stabbing the Germans in the back. And we know about the Holocaust, the greatest danger today that we have. There are many sites. You can't even imagine how many sites there are on the internet that talk about the Holohawks, right? The hoax of the Holocaust, the big lies of the Jews. You could just write Holocaust and lies, you'll get thousands and thousands of pictures. Now, if you're just a person who doesn't know history, has not been taught about Jewish history, and you look at it, you start to ask questions. You say, yeah, there's the official story of the Holocaust, but everybody believes conspiracy theories. What if the Holocaust is a conspiracy theory? And you can see, all these lies, the last days of the big lie, Hollywood, Holocaust, this is all available on the internet. This is one of the scariest things that goes on today. And 1948, what happens? Israel, State of Israel is established, officially established. Many women serve in the army and in the forces. And within just about 50, 60 years, Israel becomes this country with a huge innovation factor. This is the number of medtech companies in the years 2006, 2012. You can see the US, you can see Israel. Look at that number. I mean, we're such a tiny, little puny country. But all these startups come out of Israel. And many books call Israel the startup nation, the people who think differently. Today, Jewish population is around 14 million, half in Israel, half in the United States, another million or so in Europe, and South Africa. We have a bit in South America. It's interesting, we don't have huge communities in China. So, if we're going to think about a place that we want to settle when there are no Jews, we should go to China. But maybe soon, with all the trade that's going on and all the opening out there, maybe it's going to happen.
How many Jews before the Holocaust?
Before the Holocaust, there were 16 million Jews. So we haven't made up the distance. But we're getting close. We're at close to 14 million today. And with 1 minute, 36 seconds, we got it. Now, this is my opening music. Good. Now, if we have to talk about, I'll just take another minute of your time, even though, this is done. What is this, we talked about so many things. I mean, you probably, for a lot of you, your head must hurt from listening. There's so many things going on. The first temple, second temple, diaspora. I mean, a lot of information. You don't need to memorize it. There's no test. There's no exam. But if you look at it, especially when I look at it, two things come to mind. The first is that if you look at the time when the Jews are alive and they get well with their neighbors, right? There are no fanatics. Everything is going well. Jews are doing really good. When there's hatred, anti-Semitism, then the Jews don't flourish. So we need people in the diaspora, and not just in Israel, to keep spreading the message of what a Jew is and what Jewish life is, so people who are not familiar with our way of life, will be, and will not be scared by this. So the first thing is that we can see from all these years that the diaspora is really, really important. And the second thing, when you look at the Torah, there's a story. And with this I'm going to end this presentation and we'll open up to questions. There's a story that a guy went to Jerusalem and said to a big rabbi by the name of Shammai, said to him, teach me the Torah on one leg. Teach me the Torah really quickly. The guy says, what? You want me to teach you the entire Torah and quickly in a few sentences? Get out of my yeshiva, get out. So he goes to another place and he asks another rabbi. He tells him, can you teach me the Torah in just a few sentences? And that rabbi thinks for a second and says, I can teach you the entire Torah in 3 words. Ve'ahavta le'reacha kamocha. Thou shall love thy friend. And this is not just the message of the Torah, it's the message of our history. Thank you very, very much. All right, so before you go to the luxurious Blue Bay Hotel, any questions or any dilemmas or anything else? Are you guys hungry? Are you thirsty? What's going on? Huh? We're all good? Okay, thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
דקות היסטוריות עם יובל מלכי.